64. It was right around 64 when the first LSD really hit the street. Before that, it was something you read about in Doors of Perception, if you read about it at all, or that sort of thing you were aware of, or else you'd been exposed to mescaline. The psychedelic movement in California started on the night of the post-free speech rally. Remember when they had the whole free speech movement and everything was solid?
There was the
happy and this little freak from Boulder held up a sign that said when the whole university fell apart.
Right.
Well, the night of the big rally when they had 10,000 people in the square in the afternoon, he went like Hitler and Munich.
The dirty speech movement.
Right. That was the night. That was the night that the first quality LSD from Algernon Stanley produced in this country arrived in quart jars in Berkeley, California. The Chambers Brothers were playing at the Cabal, and Neil Cassidy and several other people were in town that evening. We were in Berkeley, like the Club 47 was in Cambridge, and I forget what the one. It wasn't called the Tangent then in Palo Alto and San Jose. It was someplace else, like Jerry Garcia and Jorma Kaukonen. Jorma Kaukonen was the fastest fingers in the South Bay. Harry Letterman was the fastest fingers in Berkeley. Who else was in that game? Steve somebody or other from Los Angeles, who burned out on methadone.
Who was appearing at the Cabal at that time? You had Fanny Bull coming through, and all the folk acts at that time.
I thought that was it. And if the acid test could have continued in its own natural progression without all that fugitive stuff with Kesey and without the laws coming down on acid, I think it would have been just incredible. In about 4 or 5 months, it would have been the biggest thing on earth, because it was like increasing, at an exponential rate, each successive acid test. The first one, there was only maybe 50 or 60 people, The next one, there was 150. The next one, there was 300, 400, and so forth. Then the Chips Festival, there were thousands, a couple of thousand, maybe 1,500 or something. It was just, gaining incredible momentum. And each time it was tremendously funny and good, and entertaining, and just what life should be, really. There's been nothing that equals that. For weirdness, the Grateful Dead has played some incredibly weird scenes all along, and some real nice, pleasant kinds of scenes. One time we went to France. For sheer unmitigated, total, all-out craziness, you couldn't beat the acid. I mean, really, nothing has ever been like those in terms of. They were really the most fun of any of those kind of things. They were really fun.
Lots of gadgets to play with.
Oh, yeah, and totally crazed things, too. Like, I remember the one at the Fillmore, the old Fillmore was tremendously successful because they had all those little cubby holes. Remember how that place was organized? They had all these little rooms and back scenes, and there was like a bar up and back, and all kinds of different levels and stuff going on in there. A lot of little rooms in the early days. Later on, a lot of that stuff got opened up and boarded out and so forth. Changed a little bit, but originally it had that segmented thing, the big room and lots of little rooms. And so the little rooms and the big room, there were like microphones distributed all over the place, and all the people with mixers and tape recorders and all this stuff, and speakers all over the place.
Thank you.
And so somebody might say something down in the corner, and it would go through a delay, and you might hear something unrelated, but there would be this incredible timing thing that would be happening, so that everything that happened would
still be bound to gravity.
Microphones. Somebody would find a microphone on the floor and say, "Hey, is anybody there?" And all of a sudden they'd hear their voice, huge, coming from all over.
They're running out of light.
Would go away, something else would come out, and all this, kind of continuous weirdness. It's just so funny, so funny sounding, and everybody's reactions to it were so funny and great. And then the cops came and busted that one. That acid test was a good one for the whole cop show. The cops came in and they looked around, and here's this one of Ron Boyce's big sculptor, big thunder machines there, people banging on it and pouring Day-Glo paint over it. It's making this incredible din resonating, and weird tapes and weird sounds going on, and people running around. All this just totally bananas shit going on. Here's these stray, good old Foursquare San Francisco Irish cops, a whole bunch of them, dozen or so of them, and they're in there. Who's in charge here? It's like the limit of the absurd. Who's in charge here? There's cops standing there and standing in the middle of the floor, with half a dozen freaks around him, raving at him, strange things out. There was some cop on the stage, I remember, an amazing scene with Weir and Phil. And Weir and Phil are both tremendous anti-authoritarian guys. They hate any authority figures. And here's this cop, like the lieutenant up there, trying to make an announcement over the microphone, which is the dials are being run by some madman up in the balcony somewhere, and so the cop's voice is coming in and out, and Kesey is raving some sort of semi-patriotic slogans over the top of the cop's rap about, we have to clear the place out, and the thing would cut off right in the middle of his rap. And Phil and Weir, they're arm in arm, around each other, and they're singing something like the Star-Spangled Banner real loud in the cop's ear, while some big bear of a freak is banging his hand with a tambourine, and the cop's looking. It was just so funny. Really hilarious.
You stay off and down, wait to wait. Oh, the name of the price don't fall on that. I say that another. And the next day, November 1st, All Souls, All Saints. You got to.
Well, I don't know about you, but that guy's
He did nothing, I did nothing, and finally, nothing. It wasn't nothing he wouldn't do for me. And I don't know what to do for him, but he sat around all the time doing nothing.
I see that America doesn't need this kind of cute
Great four-wheel drift, he adjusting his goggles, Everybody in the audience with the right foot, but I can't heel and toe, I'm double left.
We are at war. This is Franklin Delano Roosevelt speaking. As for ourselves, our time, the only salvation is to be.
38, they broke LaGuardia. Hey, children, Dick and Tracy get Steve the Tramp right through the...
All this funny stuff for timing. It was like just a huge Marx Brothers movie or something like that. Really, really funny. That's what I loved about those things.
And the doctor will be in here in a moment. I want you to see them. These are astounding facts that cannot be dealt with in any manner of the 20th century. Perhaps he was seeing visions like, say, somebody.
Exaggerate like a kid,
It's like you absolutely no paranoia. The police were like big buffoons, funny, some kind of dog police or something. They were real weird, little uniforms and shit. Just real straight voices.
They couldn't bust you for anything except
weirdness. Yeah, right, for being weird. Outfit strange, just real bizarre costume. And then Paul Foster, he's noted for his weird costumes.
20 minutes away from knowing the correct
I don't know what it was, but just everybody looked so...
Was he the guy who had a sign on one time saying he was dressed up kind of like a mummy and he said, "You're in the Pepsi generation and I'm a pimply freak"?
Yeah, right. That's him. I think in one of those ones, he was like the master of the living hallucination, sort of. One time he had a thing where all his feet and his pants and everything, all the way up to his waist, was all taped real tight with that shiny black electrician's tape.
Oh,
it really looked weird. And then he had some kind of weird robe on over that, and then he had a crutch painted battleship gray with a gun sight on the end of it. And, it was like, it almost looked like something you've seen before, It was like almost recognizable, but had this mysterious quality,
Guy comes in.
But anyway, in the midst of all that craziness, here's these police, and they're so straight, and then Babs comes down, and he looks like Babs at that time and Kesey and the Pranksters all had these kind of like superhero costumes that they wore, and they just looked incredible. Babs looked like, you know, Captain Marvel in the midst of these dumpy cops, you know. And he has this expansive style. Well, what is it, fellows? You know, what's going on, gentlemen? You know, can I be of some assistance? You know, and he's tall and commanding and all that. And he was an officer in Vietnam, so he had all the shtick, you know, this officer shtick, and he could always really come on to the cops just great. And he's there talking to him and all this stuff is going on. But just the way that things flowed, and I remember there was a whole bunch of, then for something happened, and the cops were up in the balcony, they were going around in a little official knot, sort of inspecting, you know. And all of a sudden these freaks are there with this ladder, and they're putting this ladder up to the balcony and climbing it, and they're hollering, "Hug the heat! Hug the heat!" Amazing, you know, these amazing, crazy demonstrations.